All right, welcome to the lightning talks for today. We have a few lined up for you. The first one will be Lukas. I'll let you go ahead and start in a minute. You will have 5 minutes. I do have a cowbell and I'm not afraid to use it. So go ahead.
Okay, I try my best. Oh, so hi together. I'm Lukas, and I will start right now. I'm selecting my presentation. I hope you can all see it. So I want to talk about continuous deployment with Plone through GitLab. So about me first. I'm working at Interactive GmbH. We are 18 people, and we all working with Plone and love Plone. So what is CD? So continuous deployment. In one sentence, you could say it's automating your software delivery process so that you can press on a button and automating the deploy one or multiple Plone websites. So why should you do this? Why should you use it? It saves a lot of time at first, and you can reduce human errors. Everybody has run the wrong build out on the wrong server before, so yeah, you can reduce these errors. Okay, so the typical workflow would be that you making changes in your code and then run your tests, and hopefully they run through green. Then you could deploy your code, and this step you could automate. So deploying code means in Plone that you log into your server first, pull the new code on the server, build out, restart your page. And after that, you're doing your custom steps like upgrading steps or, I don't know, indexing your Solr, whatever. And in GitLab, for example, you can add a file on the root folder, the GitLab CI YAML. And there at the top, you can include from other repositories, external repositories, to use it in multiple projects. And then you have your jobs. So for example, the test job where you install your Plone and run your tests. I simplified it a lot here because it wouldn't fit on one page. Then there's your deploy job. For example, I want to deploy to dev. Then I'm using an Alpine image, a really, really small image, Docker image. And I'm defining some variables at the bottom, for example, my username, my host, my build out. And after that, I can define rules, for example, just run if I'm pushing code into dev or if it's 8 o'clock, something like that. So the real deployment process is in this file, which I included at the top. So I want to go into that. This is just a template, so you can reuse your template in other repositories. And at first you have to install SSH on this newly created Docker and set your private key. And after that, you have, for example, your steps. So log into SSH onto your server with your SSH key, and then you go into your Plone folder, doing a git fetch to get your newest stuff and check out the specific commit you updated on the server. And then you can do this by each step. So going to the Plone folder, bootstrap, run build out, and then multiple steps like restarting your instance and so on. So at the end in GitLab, this looks a bit like this. So you have your pipeline with your build job where you run your test, and afterwards you deploy. And yeah, it's easy like that. You press on the button where you commit your code, and in some seconds it's on your deployment server to see for your customer, for example. And I just want to encourage you to use automatic deployment. Because it's really easy to implement, and it doesn't have to be GitLab. You can create your own shell script. And that's about it. If you want to talk a bit about it more, I'm happy to share this code from our GitLab deployment. And you can reach me by DM in Slack or afterwards in Jitsi. So that's about it. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Lukas. All right, next up is Érico. And after that will be Philip, unless Andreas shows up.
Hello. My name is Érico, Andrei, and I'm here talking for the Workload Day 2021. First of all, we need to acknowledge we are a global community. This conference, we have almost 300 people from 36 different countries. Okay, and we expect the first half of next year be like this one, with people still waiting to be vaccinated. So we usually host the Plone Open Garden in Toronto. So we decided to move the Workload Day that was an annual Plone event happening in every city that we have Plone companies to be online next year. So it's going to be also a global event on April 28, 2021, starting at midnight UTC time, going all the way to midnight UTC time the next day. Our goal is to stream 24 hours of Plone content in our YouTube channel. The idea is to be really simple, a really simple setup, people joining us, being part of it, and to showcase our technical talks, use cases, interview demos. One of the things we plan to do is to have interview with old Plone folks and amuse ourselves with what they're doing. For instance, right now, Miko is watching this talk, this lightning talk from Gibraltar, and he mentioned something about being in his underwear. We know Miko is a millionaire by now, so he would gladly share the recipe to be millionaire like him in the next Workload Day. Also, the idea is to be multilingual. Instead of having 24 hours of talks in English, we want you to give talks in your native language. So you're going to speak in either Portuguese, Spanish, German, Basque, Catalan, Japanese, whatever, Klingon, Finnish, Hungarian. But the point is also that you talk to your local community. So for instance, our friends from Red Turtle in Ferrara, they could basically host talks for their customers in Italian. And we want to showcase that to the rest of the world. After all, Plone is a global community. Plone as a software is multilingual. So we as a community, we need to show that. So join us, be part of this. The website is coming up on plone.org/event/Workload Day WPD. We have an email if you want to get in contact with the organizers, wpd@plone.org. And of course, on this Slack that you are right now, join the WorkPD, the WPD channel. And the marketing team is there, and we would love to have you helping us during this organization. And that was it. See you all again on April 28th. Thank you all.
Thank you, Érico. Now then, I got a video from Andreas for his, so I'm going to try to share that and hope that that works out just fine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andreas Jung. I would like to talk to you today about the new add-on Collective Content Sync 2. It's a Plone add-on for syncing Plone content between Plone sites through the Plone REST API. It was written initially by Thomas Massmann and lately adopted it to its own package called Collective Content Sync 2. So what is it exactly? It allows you to sync Plone content or folder content from one Plone site to one or So Collective Content Sync 2 is a Plone behavior that allows you to sync content between Plone sites. As you see in our picture, you have one Plone source site and you can have one or multiple Plone target sites. And all communication is done through HTTP or HTTPS of the Plone REST API. So requirements at the moment are that you need Plone 5.2 under Python 3. So how do you configure a sync configuration between two Plone sites? Step 1, you just have to create a dedicated user account, for example, Content Sync, and grant it the global role editor. The next step is to set up the sync configuration on the Plone source side. You basically create a list of Plone sites here that you want to sync under the targets data grid field, where you basically enter an ID and a title for the target Plone site. You have to specify the root URL of the destination Plone site, and you configure the given username and the password of the sync account. The installation process of Collective Commons Sync 2 automatically creates two content rules. One is used for syncing content additions, so when you create new content, to be automatically synced to the target system, and the other one cares about content updates, for example, when you update or modify an existing content object or sub-object. As mentioned earlier, you can enable the sync behavior on any Plone content type that is available on your Plone site. In this case, we enable the sync behavior on the folder type. And as soon as you click on Edit from the toolbar, you will see this Content Sync tab, where you can pick up a pre-configured target site, in this case, a production Plone site. You can enable or disable the sync process. You have to choose your target path, where basically your content will be stored on the target site. And you can choose either to enable the syncing of sub-content or not. So after configuring the sync configuration for a folder, you would basically go back to the content sync settings in your Plone control panel, click on full sync in order to sync the folder and its sub-content to the target site. That's it about Collective Commons Sync 2. It's available from the collective on GitHub, or available, of course, on PyPy as Python package. As mentioned earlier, it requires Plone 5.2 running on Python 3, and usually the source and the target size should be identical. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon in person. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Andreas. He is in the chat if anyone has any questions for him. And next up will be Philip. You are muted, Philip.
Yeah, now, technology, not my strong suit, obviously. So, talking about relations in Plone and why relations are weird. So looking at the documentation for relations, you find the following sentence, and it's at the core of it. The relation catalog can be used to optimize intransitive and transitive searches of for n array relations of finite preset I think you get what I'm aiming for, because this is my reaction to that. So yeah, I figured out how relations work. They work like this. So there's that's a relation. It's an abstract relation catalog. It is insanely complex and powerful. And it's way smarter than I think we as a collective community actually is. There is set3c relation field that implements the relation fields and the relation values that are stored on the objects. And that uses a instance of Z3 relation that is configured in Z3c relation field to store these relations. Then there's Plone app relation field that has converters, i.e. data managers, from field to widget and widget to field. Then there is Plone app Z3c form that has the relation widget and a hell of a lot of data code as well. And then there's the actual widget that lives in mockup. Yeah. How to create relations in Plone, in modern Plone. This is the way to do it. For those who are not 100% familiar with it, the clue, the best thing about this is always use as vocabulary the catalog or language root catalog. There's a catalog that you can use from Plone Multilingual if you have multilingual sites, and set the selectable types in pattern options. The huge upside here compared to other ways is that you can navigate through the site without being forced to allow actually selecting folders to basically navigate through to items. And the same with relation lists, it just looks a bit different. how to work with relations was really, really tedious. You always had to get the int ID. Actually, I'm missing big parts in that, because the int ID tool and the ZOP key reference tool I actually use to reference the objects that are stored in the relation value. It's not as straightforward as you think. So for this reason, and not least, it was really tedious to work relations, but this is why I wrote collective relation helpers. There's a nice API getting the minions using rel AP relations from an object, and you pass the relation name. Same with back relations, and you can create relations in a very similar way, just link objects and to pass the relationship. The same code from relation helpers can be used, for example, to get all relations to and from an object in a nice viewlet. So in the top left, you see all incoming relations, all outgoing relations, and also all incoming relations. And on the right is a viewlet for that. So you see it's only one line of code. And it deals with view permissions. So you'd only get the objects that you want unless you say unrestricted relations. It gets relations without fields and creates relations without fields, say link integrity, staging, etc. Obviously link integrity not, because you'd have to add a link in HTML. And it also deals with the relation field type. So if you link an object and it's a relation list, you're not losing all the already existing relations. So this is the good news. It also has a rebuild relation view. It's a browser view that you can simply call in the browser or use in code, and it will show you what kind of relations you have and just rebuild the whole thing. So there are problems with the whole relation thing, and the biggest one that I ran against is the one that references to objects in the int ID and relation catalog are not updated after the object was migrated from archetypes to dexterity. This means you, after a migration
30
to
seconds.
you still even have these objects in the database. You have to rebuild your relations using the code below. I have 3 proposals. A, include relation helpers in Plone API. There's a clip for that. People love it, but I have to work on it. Another proposal would be to change vocabularies for relation fields to actually use UUID instead of int ID. Use UUID instead of an object that requires some changes but makes it much, much faster to create vocabularies. And the third would be maybe to use UUID instead of int ID, because then we could drop ZOP int ID, 5 int ID, Plone app int ID, and ZOP key for reference, because this is the only reason we use these 4 packages for. And finally, relations are weird because they are very smart and actually smarter than us. Thank you.
Don't make me use the mute button. All right, thank you, Philip. And finally, for today is Christopher Lozinski.
Continue. This will stop other screen. Do you want to continue a sec? I'm trying to figure out how to do the screen sharing. Yes, I can continue. And this one. No, that's not the one I want. 1 second. I get the screen share down here.
I see the Plone REST API control panels.
No, that's not the one I want. Screen share. This one. Nope, that's not what I want. Where to go? Here we go. Can you see it now? No, that's no.
I see a P2B prompt.
Let's do this again. Screen share. Zoom. Screen share. That's what I want. Come on. Oh, I see. And then I have to highlight it. That's why. Okay, now you get it. Got it?
Simple JSON schema GUIs.
Yes. Okay. Hi. So today, Plone makes beautiful user interfaces, but what if you just want to do something really simple? So there's a whole rich set of libraries out there for building user interfaces using JSON schema. So first, in column 1, you create a JSON schema, And second, it generates on the client in JavaScript, it generates the user interface. It does, you enter the data, you submit, it does the data validation, you pass that to the server. On the server, it validates again to make sure there's no funny stuff, and then you update the database. Okay, so here on the right-hand side, we can see a JSON schema, and on the left, we can see a particular user interface. And here we can see a piece of the JSON schema. It's really big. Now here's an example of a user interface I built. So I did the Green Party maps, and we have people and politicians, and they're incredibly complex. So there are a whole tree of different pieces. So introduction is like their name and their title. Translatable content, that's the stuff that the multiple versions of the core content. Connect are all the URLs for social media. They could be a candidate. They could be an elected official. They could be a party officer. Pretty soon they could be donators or volunteers. It gets really complicated, right? And so you can see the different parts. Let me show you the connect piece. And you can actually choose what you want to include. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all of these different things. And remember, there are multiple branches of this JSON tree, and there are all kinds of different layouts you can choose. Here I did the tab layout. You can see elected officials, the details, party officers. You can do arrays of tree. I mean, it can do very complex, sort of arbitrary, complex, deep structures. So really, really sweet. The problem is, oh, that was one library. It's the basic JSON editor library. There's some other ones, the VTFY, I think this is called. They're much more beautiful. The problem is, come on, you end up with this really big JSON file, right? And as soon as you try to edit a file that's too big, it just gets really messy. And it's just way too complicated. Well, ZODB is great. You can solve this problem. Here we have the JSON for the root of the tree. Think of this as a JSON file. Where's the rest of the JSON schema? Well, it's a ZODB object. So we just take a look at the manage. And here are all the children branches. Come on. Here are all the children branches, the introduction, the connect, the candidate info. We can take a look at connect. And so once you break it up into lots of pieces, it's just so much easier to edit the JSON. Okay, so where are we with this? Okay, so we got that one. So that's me, Christopher Lozinski. I live in Katowice, Poland, forestwiki.com. Click on contact if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Christopher. That finishes up day one of Lightning Talks.